joining me now is Parliament's most upstanding gentleman, the Right Honourable Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg. Jacob, thank you. It's a great pleasure. It makes a little bit of a difference from me interviewing you. The tables have turned. The roles are reversed. Look, I've been an MP for 3.5 years. And the route for me to become a Conservative MP was quite simple. I was very, very lucky. I was in the right place at the right time. I'd only been in the party 18 months, and I was at that place, at the madhouse, I sometimes call it. But you, Jacob, you've come from a different background. I was born on a council estate. He was on a country estate, as I always say. You've got Bob or two from different backgrounds, but people would assume automatically that you've had the golden ticket, that you've just waltzed into Parliament because of your wealth and where you're from and what school you went to, but it wasn't like that, was it?
No, it wasn't. But you've made more impact in 3.5 years than most people make in political careers of 35 years. So it's what you do when you get there that I think matters so much. But no, I applied for lots and lots of seats. I started off in Central Fife, which was the last seat to have returned to communist. So my chances there weren't very good. But they were absolutely charming to me. When I knocked on doors in Central Fife, the standard reaction was we didn't know the Tories normally stood here. And what was so interesting about that was I learnt so much, because if you're fighting a seat that you can't possibly win, you've got time. When you're fighting a seat that you are likely to win, you've got somebody tugging you by the sleeve saying, you've got to go to the next door, you've got to go to the next door. There's nothing like that in Central Fife, so I had the chance to talk to people. And the great thing about politics is when you knock on people's doors, quite a few of them willing to tell you about their lives, how difficult they are, what they're trying to do. And that's what you learn from and how you get to understand what the issues, the problems are that politicians in Westminster need to deal with.
So Jacob, a wealthy man, a successful man, a great family, a great life, a great career in politics. What gets you out of bed in the morning?
Well, politics is enormously interesting and important. I think that's what does it as a combination. That I don't know about you, but I've found that the most important thing I do as a politician is actually the constituency work. Yeah. Now, that's not to say I don't enjoy speaking in Parliament and all the things that go with that. But every so often, a constituent comes to see you whose life has been turned upside down by failures of the state, and by writing some letters, you can right a wrong. And those are the things of which I feel most proud as I look back on the political career I've had so far.
So it's public service?
Public service is very important, but it's fun. So I wouldn't be too pious about this. I'm not sitting here saying, look, what I'm doing is public service and it's my great duty and so on and so forth. That is an element of it. But the back and forth of politics, the taking on our socialist opponents, taking on issues that matter in the hope of getting them changed, being on GB News and discussing the issues of the day. This is also a fun and enjoyable part of politics.
We're from different backgrounds, we're slightly different characters. I get a little bit et up sometimes and wear my heart on my sleeve, but nothing seems to rattle you, Jacob. How do you cope with that?
You're about to have a fight with Steve Bray, aren't you? Is this going
I was sort of hoping you was going to step in. Queensberry rules, obviously.
Right.
But how do you remain calm, Jacob?
Well, I think that in politics remaining calm helps you win the argument. Yeah. That if your opponent gets really angry and is shouting, then particularly if it's being broadcast, people are sensible, people are rational, and they think, who is that shouty person? It's the feedback we get on the programmes that we do, that if you're in an interview and you interrupt the whole time, people stop listening, and then we get complaints saying, why did you have that person on, and why did you have all that interruption? You just wait and answer the question. Then people are willing to listen and at least give you a chance to get your argument across.
So you're a big cricket fan. I know you love your cricket. I come from a cricketing county, as you know. We've got our famous sons are Harold Larwood and Bill Vose, but you're in Somerset.
I got a miniature cricket bat for my son's 11th birthday, signed by Vose and Larwood.
Wow.
Which he was absolutely delighted by, because we'd just been watching, thanks to you, the body line. Yeah.
So, cricket is a game played, not necessarily by gentlemen, but it's played in a gentlemanly way. Do you think Parliament could learn from that?
That's a very good question. The thing about cricket is that we talk a lot about how gentlemanly it is, but the greatest cricketing hero ever, W.G. Grace, always used the rules to his maximum ability.
As did Jardine.
As did Jardine. Yeah. And that cricket's always had this interesting balance between this image of cucumber sandwiches and a nice slice of chocolate cake, and some of the very, very best players who have always been very competitive. And I think there's a lesson in that for politics, that politics is competitive. It's about who is going to run the country. What we're doing in Parliament matters. We shouldn't be surprised that Prime Minister's questions is contentious, because what they're debating is who should lead the country, and that matters for people's daily lives.
So I guess, at the moment, Jacob, political heroes. Who is your hero and why?
Oh, political heroes, it goes back to this period. It is Pitt the Younger is a very important figure in British history, that the victory in the Napoleonic Wars essentially protects freedom and liberty and our way of life. And the great war leaders, so Pitt the Younger, Churchill, and to some extent Lloyd George, are the ones who make a real fundamental difference to how the country is governed for decades and decades, because otherwise you'd have something imposed from outside.
So when we walk through Westminster Hall, through the old chamber, we see these characters, we see statues, and even today, as I walk through those rooms, I still get that feeling that I'm so proud, I feel privileged, I feel honoured. But you're an historian as well, aren't you? You like your history. So how does it make you feel walking past all these political giants from hundreds of years ago?
Well, the best part of the Palace of Westminster is Westminster Hall. Because if you think, that was built in the reign of William Rufus. So since 1100, just before, every minor political figure in English and then British and then UK-ish history has been through Westminster Hall. That is a phenomenal link to our history and to the personalities of our history. Think of things that went on there. Thomas More tried in Westminster Hall. Charles I tried in Westminster Hall. Richard II deposed in the hall where he'd just put in the roof by the House of Commons sitting in Westminster Hall. I mean, it is an incredible link to our history and the oldest bit of the palace, and I just find it very exciting.
And then you're next door into the old chamber, and you think that there are some laws that we adhere to today which were passed in that very room like hundreds of years ago.
That's absolutely right. I think the most important ancient law is the Act of Tallage, and the Act of Tallage requires that the consent of the Commons is given to new taxation. And this is the 1290s. And that law still takes effect. The House of Commons has to approve new taxation.
Jacob, thanks. That's been fascinating. What a fascinating discussion with... I talk about political heroes, but Jacob Rees-Mogg, Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg, is one of my political heroes, absolute legend and a gentleman. And thanks, Jacob.
Thank you.
So, Jacob, before you go, I want to say a massive welcome to former Labour MP Stephen Pound, who's going to join us on this new section of the show, which is the yes or no quiz. Now, people get a little bit fed up, as you know. Politicians not answering a straight question, not saying a yes or no, they tend to waffle on and on. So the yes-no quiz basically is I ask you 5 questions, you both get the same questions, and you have to answer a yes or a no. If you abstain, then that could be seen as a little bit cowardly. And be warned, you may get a white feather through the post at some stage from me. So I'm going to fire with the first question to you, Jacob. Can a woman have a penis?
No.
Stephen, can a woman have a penis?
No.
OK. Next question. More grammar schools, yes or no?
Yes.
No.
No. Clear answers. Do you agree with the Rwanda scheme, Jacob?
Yes.
Stephen?
No.
Clear answer. Do you think Sir Keir Starmer would make a good Prime Minister?
No.
Well, I think it's a very good question.
That's an abstain.
Absolutely yes.
100%?
100%.
Well, that's a definite yes. And final question, Jacob. Taking the knee, yes or no?
No, no, no.
3 no's.
Not anymore.
Is that a no or a yes?
No.
Is that a no? Well, I mean, that's very interesting. We've got 5 answers from 2 politicians. All straightforward answers, yes or no. They didn't shirk their responsibility to answer. Very brave of you guys in this day and age, because sometimes politicians do dodge the answers. But Jacob, I'll come to you first. You know, that was quite simple. And sometimes, like I say, people do get frustrated with politicians, especially on question time, not answering. But do you think there is a case for having more yes or no's, or should you always qualify your answers?
Lots of things are subject to nuance. I think there are 2 different issues, actually. You can answer the question more than by saying yes or no, as long as you get round to answering the question eventually. Yes or no is sometimes too narrow.
Yeah. Stephen?
Well, it's the old, when somebody says to you, when did you stop beating your wife? There's no answer to that, is there? Well, if you say yes or no, you've had it. So, absolutely right. I hate to agree with Jacob, but he's right.
Yeah, but the thing is, Stephen, since I've become to know you, you're actually one of the reasons, people, MPs, ex-MPs like yourself in the Labour Party, was one of the reasons I joined the Labour Party. I thought all the Labour MPs were like you.
I'm sorry, I'm responsible for Lee Anderson.
Well, no, not directly. I think my mother and father's got something to do with that. But that side, I thought, that traditional Labour Party, their working class values, boys and girls that have come up the hard way, done proper jobs.
Yeah. Lee, the reality is there's far too many people in this country who overcomplicate things. Yeah. And it's because it's about their ego. And partly it's because politicians hate to give offence. They're terrified about actually being on one side of the fence or the other.
I've got to say, we are a broad church. Look at Jacob, where he's come from, where he's ended. And I'm in the same place. So it's an absolutely wonderful place to work.
Well, I think what that means is that GB News is marginally better than the House of Commons.
Well, a great sentence to finish on. Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Jacob.
Cheers.
That's the end of that. Look,